best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly, power, the likes of which this world has never seen before.
Is the new deal with North Korea actually a deal? Is it good for the United States? Can we trust the North Koreans to follow it? Doug McGregor is a retired U.S. Army colonel, author of the book Margin of Victory. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry is a Republican, represents the state of Nebraska, and both of them join us tonight. Congressman, first to you, is this a deal Americans ought to be happy about?
Well, the best word that I can use to describe the last few days, in my mind, is stunning. I think the president's actions here are bold, they're historic. It's almost unimaginable, given where we were just 6 months ago, where we were on the precipice of some type of even potential nuclear exchange. The president has leaned into something pretty radical here, and perhaps he's creating a new architecture for 21st century diplomacy. He has said to Kim Jong-un, we're going to deal with you, for good or for ill. And if it's for ill and you move your finger toward a nuclear button, we're going to hurt you. But if it's for good, I want to create the space for perhaps authentic dialogue and even friendship, and I think he accomplished that. He has rejected the norms of ossified proceduralism and stagnation that governed so many international affairs, and he took a bold risk, and I think he delivered something very important. It's his first step. We are holding out hope, obviously, for a greater vision that could evolve here, but it's an important and good first step.
Ossified proceduralism, a phrase I'm stealing. Colonel, are you as optimistic about it?
Extremely. I think this is Donald Trump's finest hour, and I'm absolutely serious. Donald Trump has recognized something that others have refused to see for a very long time in Washington. It's not simply that North Korea is on the ropes. It is. It's on the verge of collapse. Donald Trump understood that, and that's one of the reasons he was able to put the pressure on North Korea the way he did. But he also went to great lengths in his meetings with President Xi to forge an understanding with China. He treated President Xi as an equal, treated China as an equal. And I think Donald Trump understands something that is not well understood in the Pentagon at this point, or in many other places in Washington, and that our competition with China is essentially economic and technological. It is not military. And that was the key development, because without China, none of this would have happened.
Yes, that's right. And I think it clearly stemmed from what he said about trade with China. Congressman, there's been a lot of criticism of this deal from the left along the lines that the president is giving away important American advantages in exchange for nothing. How would you respond to that?
This is the combination of foreign policy realism and entrepreneurial diplomacy. And as I said, this is not only about potentially preventing a conflict and opening up a new chapter and rejecting a stalemate of the last 65 years with North Korea, but it also could signal a new way, a new architecture for diplomatic relations moving forward. Look, the world is screaming for some type of new interpersonal ecosystem, both in our homes and in our communities, as well as between nations. And what that means is that we have to have the ability to reach out and provide authenticity and dialogue and create some space, because the world is racing toward destructive technology. And then what? Civilization itself is at stake, and we've got to find a way forward toward mutuality and well-being and mutual security, or else we don't have much hope.
In the day's other news, the Trump administration faced more fallout from the president's Singapore summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo sought to dispel doubts and answer questions in South Korea and China. With smiles and a handshake, Secretary Pompeo greeted South Korea's President Moon Jae-in. part of the mission to reassure Moon after President Trump announced in Singapore that he will end joint U.S.-South Korean military exercises. Today, South Korea's foreign minister insisted Seoul will have a say about that.
The joint South Korea-U.S. military exercise is a matter for the South Korea-United States alliance.
But in an interview last night, Mr. Trump said again he means to end the joint exercises. At the same time, he said reducing U.S. troop levels in South Korea is not up for negotiation yet.
I'd like to get them home. I would like to, but it is not on the table right now. At the appropriate time, it will be.
In Washington today, at his confirmation hearing to be ambassador to South Korea, retired Navy Admiral Harry Harris agreed with the president that military exercises should be delayed.
We should give exercises, major exercises, a pause to see if Kim Jong-un, in fact, is serious about his part of the negotiations.
Meanwhile, Secretary Pompeo moved on to Beijing and meetings with President Xi Jinping and China's foreign minister. Pompeo said there it's too early to know for sure if North Korea is no longer a nuclear threat, despite President Trump's declaration yesterday that it is not. Pompeo also said President Trump is approaching North Korea with eyes wide open.
On this vast frozen tundra in the shadow of North America's highest peaks, U.S. Army missile defense teams are at the ready.
We're more than 100 miles away from Fairbanks, essentially the middle of nowhere.
A place where moose outnumber the men and women of the 49th Missile Defense Battalion. All have volunteered to be here. Life seems normal for these 300, whose motto is defending 300 million.
It's a very important mission for our nation as a whole.
Engaging the threat to Los Angeles.
Their mission, anything but normal.
Threat in the system is showing impact to Los Angeles.
We are shown a simulated threat, a North Korean ICBM called the Hwasong-15, headed to the West Coast.
Weapons, engage target to Los Angeles with 2 GBIs.
GBIs, ground-based interceptors, would be launched not by a big red button, but by a simple mouse click.
We are training nonstop here.
Major Terry Homestead leads Charlie Crew, training to defeat a North Korean ICBM.
Those split-second decisions is telling my weapons, shoot that interceptor at that threat.
Beneath these domes lie 40 interceptors, each a $75 million shot.
The missile silos are 75 feet deep. They're encased in steel and concrete. This is the underground vault where maintenance teams can access the weapon. But right now, all of the missiles here are locked and loaded, which means we can't show you what's on the other side of this blast door.
We send enough GBIs up there to make sure that we negate any sort of threat.
Colonel Kevin Kick says for every North Korean ICBM headed to a U.S. target, at least 2 interceptors will be shot.
How confident are you to be successful in the event of an attack?
I have absolute confidence in this system.
Although test records show only a 55% success rate, last year interceptors shot down this mock North Korean ICBM designed from models.
As we assess North Korea, we know that they've continued to exceed what we've projected their capability to be.
At this remote outpost, these interceptors could one day decide the fate of millions of Americans.
Alright, it looks like I have to do another video on this topic because there's several people coming out with videos saying that this is fake, that they've debunked it, that this is just a homeless encampment. And I'm going to point out why in a very obvious way that it can't be one. Okay, I'm going to just, although I want to first play a little bit of a clip from a former police officer in the area. And this guy actually I interviewed on this channel, my channel here, before he even had a channel on YouTube, when he was like 100 subscribers, Brandon Tatum. back during the election, he made a video on Facebook that went viral. Some people took it and didn't ask for permission and threw it up on YouTube. And I actually referenced the clip a little bit, but I felt like, you know, he was getting kind of gypped from it. And I said, look, man, you have a great personality. I think you could go far on YouTube, and I'll interview you here on YouTube. And I did so back like a year. I don't know how long ago it's been a while. But look at him now. He's at, let's see, where's his channel? I had it open a second ago. Here it is. Look, he's already at 128,000 subscribers. The guy, I was right. I knew he could make it, but he has an opinion that he thinks that is potentially just a homeless encampment. And I'm going to point out a very obvious reason why it probably is not one. A very obvious thing that will make it a very small percentage chance that it could be a homeless encampment. A very small percent, probably basically zero. And you'll see why in a minute here. But first, let's play what he has to say. And then I'm going to point out why, in a very obvious manner, it's most likely not a homeless encampment. All right? Here we go. Let's play this.
And they're saying that the police department and local law enforcement and federal government, that they aren't participating in this investigation. They're not helping them out. So I want to set the record straight with you. First and foremost, that I want to give y'all some insight on this, right? Because when I was a police officer, I worked in Tucson, and the veterans on patrol were in my division. And don't believe what you read at face value.
Okay, first I got to say, Veterans on Patrol is a completely separate organization from Craig Sawyer's organization here. His is for veterans for protecting children or something like that. It's a completely different organization. All right, let's just keep playing here.
And the reason why I say that is because the founder of Veterans on Patrol, that gentleman, is not who you think he is. And I'll say this, some of what he does, trying to go into homeless camps and recruit veterans and get them some level of opportunities, I respect that. I respect that about him. But other than that, this gentleman has issues. And he's one of those Zimmerman types where he get a little bit of power going way too far. These Veteran on Patrol guys are carrying around guns. They arrested people in the park, and they were doing all kinds of stuff that put them in the category of being questionable. And you know, you try to let people that are trying to do the right thing and being regular citizens, you try to let them, being proactive citizens, you try to let them have a little reign. But that gentleman, man, he kind of off the rocker a little bit, and he's one of those people that he's overly zealous, and so he's breeding a culture of people doing that. And so when the law enforcement officers come to him and tell him something he don't like, he decides to take things in his own hands and try to make a big fuss about it. Whether it's patrolling the parks, whether it's doing all kinds of other stuff. I done had run-ins with this gentleman plenty of times. And I remember thinking to myself as a law enforcement agency that we're going to end up getting into a shooting altercation with this guy.
All right, so what he's talking about is the first organization that was on site for this, alleged camp for pedo camp, I guess you would call it. This first organization that was on site, apparently they said some misinformation at first to Craig Sawyer and told him that there were some potential kids there when there wasn't. So in reality, what Brandon Tatum's talking about here is an organization that's separate from Craig Sawyer. So, you know, that video I made previously about Craig Sawyer is completely unrelated to what he's talking about here. But I wanted to get to where he was talking about the camp itself. Let me get to it real quick here.
Down. So they get a little out of control. So I want y'all to understand it from that perspective before you move on. You know, it's a lie when it comes to whether or not law enforcement is actively being involved in it, rock or not, but homeless people love to have kinky sex too, all right? It looks like everything else. Only thing that's suspicious to a certain degree is straps. They had these little ropes and straps on the tree, which, believe it or not, I don't know if you guys live under a tree or not, or under a rock or not, but homeless people love to have kinky sex too, all right? So it's not necessarily ruled out that they're not doing something sexual themselves, tying each other up and having porn and stuff in the homeless camp, but that can very well be true. So I want everybody that's watching this, that's in the Team Tatum group, and the people that are watching this to...
All right, so you heard what he's saying there. He thinks that it could be a homeless encampment because he's seen camps before for homeless and he thought it looked similar. But let me just point out something very obvious that apparently a lot of people are missing. If you look at the size of that septic tank, it's more than this. It's much bigger than this. I mean, if you just take out the 1,000 gallons equals only 133 cubic feet, which, you know, is not very big, honestly. I mean, we're talking, look, if you times 10 by 10 by 2, you're already bigger, all right? That's how small it is. So what we're talking about for a septic tank, and, you know, of course, you have to ask yourself, how did they get the septic tank out there? Okay? How in the world did they get it out there? That's one. Two, it's more like this size, okay? Even though this is a different shape, this is a huge septic tank, all right? This is probably more like the size that the one was that was being used. So it's not cheap. This is not cheap, okay? Do you know of homeless people that can afford this? Do you know of homeless people that have cars or trucks to haul that thing out in the middle of freaking nowhere and put it on its side? Does that make a lot of sense to you? Do you know of homeless people that can do that? I don't think I do. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Does it make a lot of sense to you? No, it doesn't. It doesn't make logical sense for this to be used for a homeless encampment. It costs a lot of money for someone who has no money. There's no way for them to get it out in the middle of nowhere. They have to dig it up. Does that make any sense to you? I mean, obviously they're not going to use a used one either. And it was on its side. It was clearly put there on its side, which would mean, I mean, obviously, look, it was very clean inside. It wasn't one that has been used before for, you know, crap and stuff. So is somebody going to give a homeless person a say, hey, do you want to use a septic tank? I just happen to have one sitting around for no reason. Hey, look, you can just stick it on my huge truck over here on the trailer and just haul it out there for no reason and just bury it in the ground. It doesn't make any sense. Look, man, I mean, I respect Brandon Tatum. You know, like I said, I interviewed him on my channel way back before he even had a channel. I told him that I think he could make it here on YouTube, and look, he did. But, you know, I think he's a good guy. I think he has a lot of good videos. I don't always agree with him on everything, but I think, honestly, you know, I think he's wrong in this situation. I think just common sense tells you no homeless person would have the means to buy a septic tank or even inherit one or get it in any fashion or sense of fashion to even put it out in the middle of freaking nowhere in a wooded area. It makes no sense, okay? There's literally no way they could get that in there. It clearly had to be somebody who had money, who had means to put it there. It's not rocket science. It was on a certain person's property, okay? The mayor happens to be a Rothschild, okay? This clearly is not a homeless encampment unless, you know, it was used for something bad and then some homeless people went there afterwards, which of course I wouldn't even think that would be the case because clearly all the things that were left over there still appeared to be what it would have originally been intended to be used for, which would be by a person who had money, who had means, who had to put it there. And obviously it's not an efficient way to have an encampment for somebody who has money. Obviously, if you have money, you're not going to buy a septic tank and put it on its side and live in it. It's retarded, okay? And obviously a homeless person doesn't have the money to buy it. It's clearly a sore thumb that points out, one, it can't be a homeless person. They don't have the money. They don't have the means. Even if someone did have the means to give it to them, it's just an off-the-wall crazy idea. It makes no sense. Why wouldn't the hell would someone buy a septic tank for a homeless person? Hey, I'm being charitable. I'm going to buy you a septic tank, put it out in the middle of a freaking forest, and put it on its side so you can live in it. And of course, it is a little dangerous. You shouldn't put your kids in it, but I think it's a good idea for you to put your kids in it. It's retarded. Obviously, that's not what it is. It's not that. It's not that. It's not. So if you have money, are you going to buy a septic tank and put it on its side and put your kids in it? No. The only people that would do this is somebody who's doing something wrong. This is the point. I don't know why anybody else is not really pointing this out, but this isn't rocket science, but you just have to use your brain. Think a little bit logically about it. You have to ask them, who would use a septic tank to do this? No homeless person would use it. No person with money would use this, because if you had money, you would just build a log cabin or build a house. You wouldn't freaking put a septic tank on its side and put some kids in it. It's not rocket science, people. Doesn't take a rocket science to figure this out. Apparently it does, because I'm making a video about it because there's so many people who can't understand this simple concept. So I'm explaining it to some of these people who make videos. I mean, you would think even a policeman would understand this. I mean, obviously there are some weird homeless encampments. That makes sense. But you just have to ask yourself if it makes logical sense. Are they going to buy a used septic tank? Hell no. Hell no. Are you going to buy a used septic tank to put your kids in? I mean, just think about it. Just use your brain. Okay? Obviously, it had to be used. I mean, not used, new. And if it's new, it costs a lot of money. And the people that have the money to buy it aren't going to buy it for this purpose. Okay? Now, if you somehow... I'm trying to think of a way you could get it where it just would make sense. The only thing I can think of is if a company goes out of business that sells septic tanks and they're selling them at like 10% or something. That's like a 1 in a million chance or something. That's like winning a lottery. So we got like a 1 in a million chance that a homeless person would have this. It's like a lottery type of thing. Okay, so it's far more likely this was used for insidious purposes. It's far more likely. Tell me, I mean, if you're super smart and you understand all this stuff, just tell me, how in the world would a homeless person buy this? And why would someone buy it for them to put it out in the middle of nowhere? Just ask yourself this simple question. Tell me who would use this for any other purpose other than what it appears to have been used for. Just ask yourself that question, because, I mean, obviously we have a lot of people here that watch videos. There's got to be somebody who can think of something else. If there is nothing else, that's it right there. Okay? Most likely. So this is why people are so concerned about it. And of course, a lot of people are just telling, oh, you're an idiot, you're dumb. Look, Snopes already debunked it in like 2 seconds, even though they haven't looked at the evidence themselves, because, of course, they have an agenda. They're trying to push a certain agenda. And, of course, the fact that they were so quick to debunk this whole thing, it just shows you someone's behind the agenda to debunk it. You know what I mean? So this is just my video on it, response to some of these people that are trying to claim that this could just be in a homeless encampment. Obviously, it's not. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out.